sky tears open, hundreds of missiles streak upward at 15,000 miles per hour, leaving fiery trails across the horizon. It's the nightmare every general has whispered about since the Cold War. Moscow has pressed the button. A full nuclear strike is on its way. The Pentagon, New York, the silos buried deep in Montana. Every second brings millions closer to annihilation. Each target is not random. It's a carefully selected piece of America's defense shield. Destroy them, and Russia might cripple the ability to fight back. In a matter of minutes, shockwaves would vaporize entire cities. Blast zones would stretch for miles. Radiation would poison land and water for generations. And yet, behind this horror lies something colder: military logic. So, where would Russia strike first? Would it be the command centers that control America's defenses, the nuclear field that launch a counterattack, or the iconic cities that symbolize American power? This list isn't mere strategy, it's the script for Armageddon. And as each target is revealed, one truth becomes clear. Survival won't hinge on power, but on who takes the first blow. Next, the Pentagon, the brain of US defense, and a bullseye on every Russian map. The first missile doesn't head toward a missile field or a remote base. It arcs straight toward the capital. The Pentagon, America's military brain, is target number one. If a warhead detonated here, the fireball alone would vaporize everything within a half a mile. The Pentagon itself, gone in an instant. But the devastation would not stop there. The shockwave would tear through Washington, D.C., flattening neighborhoods, toppling monuments, and collapsing bridges. More than 500,000 lives could be erased in moments. The White House, just over 2 miles away, sits well within the kill zone. Even if not directly hit, the force of the blast would likely destroy it. The Capitol and Supreme Court would crumble in the fallout. Leadership at the highest levels could vanish in an instant. For Russia, this strike isn't just symbolic, it's strategic. By decapitating America's command structure, Moscow would hope to paralyze the military response. Orders would struggle to move through the chain of command. Panic would ripple through the surviving government. But even as Washington burns, the nightmare doesn't end there. Russia's plan goes deeper, far beyond politics. The next targets are hidden in the vast plains of America's heartland. Next, the silos of the Midwest, America's nuclear sword, and Russia's urgent priority to destroy them. While Washington reels, Russian warheads arc straight toward the quiet plains of Montana, North Dakota, and Wyoming. These aren't cities filled with skyscrapers, they're flat fields and small towns. But beneath the soil lies America's nuclear sword, the Minuteman III missile silos. Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana controls more than 150 intercontinental ballistic missiles. A single strike here wouldn't just kill thousands in Great Falls and Black Eagle. It would cripple America's ability to launch its own nuclear response. The logic is chilling. Destroy the weapons before they can fire. Next comes Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. With another 150 missiles hidden in reinforced silos, it's a critical piece of America's arsenal. But unlike Montana's sparse landscape, Minot is close to a city of nearly 50,000. Casualties here could number in the tens of thousands, with fallout poisoning the soil, water, and air across the region. And then there's Francis E. Warren in Wyoming, where missile silos are spread across 3 states. Striking this base would devastate Cheyenne and leave a scar of radiation across Nebraska and Colorado.
For Russia, neutralizing these silos is the only way to blunt America's nuclear retaliation, but it's still not enough. Russia sets its sights on the command centers, the hidden brains that keep the nuclear arsenal alive. The missiles don't stop with silos. Russia knows that as long as America's command centers survive, the nuclear arsenal can still answer back. So the crosshairs shift to the hidden brains of US defense. Deep in Colorado Springs sits NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command. From here, radars sweep the skies for threats, and warnings pulse out to every branch of the military. A nuclear blast here would kill tens of thousands in Colorado Springs instantly, with radiation spreading across the Rockies. But the true target isn't the city, it's the eyes of America's defense. Blind NORAD and the nation's early warning system goes dark. Farther east, another warhead arcs toward Offutt Air Force Base near Omaha, Nebraska. This is STRATCOM, the strategic command responsible for nuclear deterrence and global strikes. If STRATCOM is destroyed, the US military would lose its ability to coordinate a retaliatory strike. Nearly 200,000 could be injured or killed, and the Missouri River would carry radioactive waste down the stream, poisoning ecosystems for years. By silencing these command hubs, Russia hopes to throw America into confusion. No orders, no guidance, just chaos. But one part of the nuclear triad remains far harder to hit: the silent fleet, hidden deep beneath the oceans. Next, Russia's challenge at sea: how to silence America's nuclear submarines before they strike back. Even if Washington falls and silos are crushed, one deadly force still waits beneath the oceans: America's ballistic missile submarines. Silent, hidden, and nearly impossible to track, they carry enough firepower to erase nations. For Russia, disabling them is critical. That's why warheads would arc toward places most people have never heard of. In Maine, the Cutler Naval Radio Station uses very low-frequency signals to transmit launch codes to submarines in the Atlantic. Destroying it would silence one arm of the fleet. But a strike here wouldn't just kill those on base, it would irradiate the coast, poisoning fisheries and crippling ecosystems across the North Atlantic. On the Pacific side, Jim Creek Naval Radio Station in Washington serves the same purpose. A hit here could black out communications with submarines prowling the Pacific. Fallout could drift toward Seattle or even across the border into Vancouver, leaving cities hundreds of miles away choking on radioactive ash. And in Hawaii, the Lualule transmitter links to the Pacific Fleet near Pearl Harbor. But Oahu isn't farmland, it's home to over 1 million people. A strike here would turn paradise into a graveyard, and perhaps make the entire island uninhabitable. Even if these stations fall, submarines may still respond, which leaves Russia one brutal option: turn its sights on America's greatest cities. Next, the urban apocalypse. New York City, Los Angeles, and Chicago prime civilian targets in a nuclear exchange. Once the silos, command centers, and communication hubs are burning, Russia's strategy shifts to America's heart, the cities. Here, the logic isn't about crippling the military, it's about crippling the nation itself. New York City, the financial capital of the world, would be the ultimate prize. A single 800-kiloton warhead detonating over Manhattan could kill up to 2 million people instantly. Another 3 to 5 million would suffer burns, radiation, or crushed lungs from collapsing buildings. The skyline would vanish, replaced by a crater of fire. Survivors would wander a toxic wasteland with no power, no hospitals, no way out.
On the West Coast, Los Angeles becomes another bullseye. 4 million residents and endless sprawl leave little room to escape. 500,000 could die in the first moments. Millions more would be stranded in traffic jams, choking on fallout as they tried to flee. Drought-stricken reservoirs would be poisoned, leaving California without safe water. And in the Midwest, Chicago's 3 million residents face the same nightmare. A blast over the city would ripple through Lake Michigan, spreading radioactive fallout across the Great Lakes. Fresh water for 40 million people, now poisoned. But Russia's crosshairs wouldn't stop at America. Europe waits next in the line of fire. Next, NATO under siege, Ramstein, London, and Europe's fragile defenses. If America is burning, Europe would not be spared. Russia knows that any strike on the United States triggers NATO's response, and that means silencing bases across the Atlantic before they can react. The first European bullseye, Ramstein Air Base in Germany. This hub coordinates NATO's air and missile defenses. A strike here could kill 30,000 instantly, with fallout drifting across the continent. But the true aim is not just casualties, it's blinding NATO's defenses, leaving Europe exposed. From there, missiles could rain down on NATO's Supreme Allied Command in Belgium, a nerve center linking European and US forces. Its destruction would rip apart coordination just as counterstrikes are being ordered. But military bases aren't the only targets. Cities like London, home to 8.8 million, stand as both symbols and strategic threats. The UK possesses its own nuclear arsenal. A detonation over London could kill more than 1 million in minutes, leaving radiation drifting north into Scotland and west into France. Italy, too, with its Caserma e Derle base, housing the powerful 173rd Airborne Brigade, could find itself in the crosshairs. No city or nation in NATO would be safe. But even Russia's leaders know the fire wouldn't stop at Europe's borders. Next, the chain reaction, how global retaliation would spiral into mutually assured destruction. With missiles detonating across the US and NATO, the world crosses the point of no return. Retaliation is not optional, it is guaranteed.
Within minutes, surviving US submarines would fire back, their nuclear payloads slicing toward Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Russia's own missile fields. Britain and France, both nuclear powers, would unleash their arsenals in support of NATO. In hours, Russia's cities would be reduced to ash, its population centers erased, its infrastructure crippled. But retaliation doesn't stop at Russia. Fallout carried on the wind would sweep across Europe, Asia, and even back toward the Kremlin itself. The very act of launching nuclear war would poison the attacker as much as the enemy. This is the brutal logic of mutually assured destruction, the doctrine that has kept the peace since the Cold War. One strike leads to another, until both sides are gone. Experts estimate a full-scale exchange between Russia and the West could kill hundreds of millions directly and billions more from famine, radiation, and collapse of global systems. Yet, there's an even darker truth. Even if leaders know it means their own end, desperation can still drive the launch. Next, the hidden danger, why the world remains terrifyingly unprepared for even a single nuclear strike. For decades, leaders have sworn that nuclear war is unthinkable. Yet beneath the promises lies a harsh reality. If a bomb fell tomorrow, the world is not ready. In the United States, emergency plans exist, but they are mostly adapted from natural disasters and conventional attacks. They cannot account for a city like New York losing 2 million people in seconds, or for millions more flooding hospitals that no longer exist. Communication systems would collapse. Power grids would fry under electromagnetic pulses. Water systems would be poisoned by fallout. Survivors would have nowhere to go, and no government plan could handle the scale of the chaos. Globally, the situation is no better. NATO may have military strategies, but civilian evacuation plans are vague at best. Few nations stockpile enough medicine or food to handle nuclear winter. Radiation shelters exist only in limited numbers. Billions would be left exposed to the elements, facing famine and sickness. 70 after after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, humanity has witnessed nuclear horror before. Yet despite advances in technology, governments remain shockingly unprepared for its return. And that raises the final question, the one no nation dares answer. Could desperation ever override reason? And would one man's choice be enough to end civilization itself? In the end, nuclear war isn't about technology or numbers. It comes down to a single decision, a command given in desperation, fear, or rage. One man, one moment, and the world's fate could be sealed. For Russia, that man is Vladimir Putin. Surrounded by isolation, threatened by collapse, could he decide to pull the trigger? He knows that firing even a single warhead means retaliation, the destruction of Russia, and the likely end of his own life. Yet history shows that leaders under pressure can gamble everything, even if the cost is total ruin. And the danger is not just in Moscow.
A misread radar signal, a computer glitch, or a false alarm could unleash the same catastrophe. In 1983, one Soviet officer stopped such a mistake from sparking Armageddon. But next time, will there be anyone willing or able to hesitate? The terrifying truth is this: humanity's survival rests on fragile systems and fragile minds. The stockpile still exists. The targets are mapped. The missiles wait in silence. The only question left is not if the button could be pressed, but when.